Hello everyone, this is Dammit Bird, and if you're here, then you are looking for ways to implement a aesthetically pleasing, Zelda-like inventory UI system for your game using Pixel Game Maker MV. This is essentially what it would look like. Keep in mind that this tutorial assumes that you have a little bit more than a basic understanding of Pixel Game Maker MV. And if you are just starting out, you can either cut and paste everything inside this program to your game, or you can start out with Baz's channel, which is a great place for people who just bought the engine to start out at. His channel is linked in the description. Okay, so in the description, you're going to find a file that you can download from my Google Drive, and this is essentially what it's going to bring you to. The intent is for you to follow along with me and kind of dissect the code along with me, because at some parts of it, it can get a little confusing. This is the playtest version of it, and I'm just going to open up my inventory menu right here. This is what's going to pop up, and you'll see that you can move the cursor around however you want. And I have 35 slots here. I didn't think this through. I do not need 35 slots. I don't know if you'll need 35 slots, but if you do, here you go. It's easy to look at, and if you go over too far to the right, it'll bounce off to the left, go down, and it'll respawn up near the top. This just gives the player some freedom of movement throughout the UI. So I don't have anything yet in the inventory, so let's just collect a few items here. Okay, so I've collected a bunch of items, and now I have some items in my inventory. It is also worth noting that if you exit the inventory, it will remember what box you were in before. Okay, now if we select an item, you'll also see down here in the bottom that whatever is selected becomes the active item and is displayed as such on the HUD. Right. So let's just go ahead and select this item, and now you have this bottle of poison as the active item. Now you'll see over here in the UI I have my own little thing that says use item here. It doesn't do anything. That's for you to decide as the developer. But yeah, just like Zelda, we now have a inventory UI system that shows the player what is currently the active item. So how do we get that? Okay. Going through the code, or going through the engine here, you'll see that I have a scene and I have a home scene. This is just an example of what we were just in. But the menu scene is what we're really looking at here. Again, feel free to just export this entire thing into your game and save yourself some time, but it would definitely benefit you to know exactly what the inner workings of these objects are. Also, any resources found in here were either made by myself or downloaded free off the internet. Links to those will also be in the description. All right, so I have my HUD right here, and this is important because I have the item box here, and these are also very important as well. We will get to that in a moment. My pause, my inventory, and over here I have shop. I was going to do a shop, I decided against it, so you can pretty much ignore it. There's nothing of value or of anything inside the shop tab. You will also see that there's a cursor over every single block. I'm going to get ahead of myself for a moment, but that's okay. It's important that these are on every single box, because if you highlight one of them and you head over here, you're going to see that they are all different. They're all the same object, but they all have a different object action. So this one says slot 1 on, slot 2 on, and slot 35 on respectively. these all are based on switches and variables. So we can take a look at our switches and variables over here. I have, this is just for notes right here. You don't even need to worry about this one. I have current slot, which the default value is 1. All right, this is also important, otherwise the game is going to bug. I have current item, which is 0, and 1 for slot all the way down to 35. Now I think some of these are -1, and that's just because partway through coding this I had like nothing as -1, and then if it was in there, it was the variable was 1. There was no reason for that, so the default value for all the slots should be 0. If it's not like that, please go ahead and correct it. Now that we've gone through the variables, let's go through the objects. I have one object for the inventory menu itself and the item box. There is no links and no runtime actions involved with this. It is just there to show the picture. That is all. And this thing is useless. Remember, I was going to develop a shop and I didn't. Now the inventory color is also important because literally all it's going to do is sit there on the HUD, right? Remember, I told you this was going to be important. It sits here on the HUD doing nothing, waiting for the command to call the menu. And it's important that this is on the HUD and off screen so that it's there and it's active and waiting for the player. If it's not there, then it's not going to behave properly. Okay, back to the objects. So there's no runtime actions here, but the condition of Y on press, when the player presses Y, it is going to go to this node right here called inventory menu, which is going to select this menu screen, inventory, which is right here, this tab right here on my menu scene. It's going to change game speed to 0% for no time limit on these 3 targets. This is important because, hey, if you go into a menu, you should probably pause the game behind it. All right? And having some sort of audio feedback for the player is also very, very helpful in making this an enjoyable experience for the individual. Now, once the player exits the menu, all right, the condition is inventory signaler hide menu. So that's right here. We're about to go into this next. When the inventory signaler goes to the object action hide menu, then the caller is going to go right back here and wait for the call. That's it. That is all that this object does. You'll see why we need a separate object for this in a minute. Now the inventory signaler looks a little intimidating, okay? Welcome to my spaghetti code. Okay. This is not as intimidating to look at as you think it might be. It just looks crazy because there's links going everywhere, overlapping everything, but I promise you this will make sense. Now, this is a physical or a virtual representation of the inventory slots. I have slot 1 through 35, all in the physical location that it would be in the actual UI. Does it have to be like that? No, but for you, the programmer putting this together, yeah, it should be like that. So slot 1 to slot 35, they all have the same runtime actions. I'm going to go through those in a minute, but before we do that, what should be happening is you should be able to move slots based on certain criteria. So in order to move from slot 1 to slot 8, all the player has to do is press down. That is it. Make sure it's down on press, not pressed. Otherwise, you're just going to have some weird behaviors. And it's the same thing, same thing, same thing down on press in order to move down to the slot below you. And inversely, up, up, up on press, right? You see the pattern here. From slot 1, if you want to go to slot 2, it is right on press. And from slot 2 to slot 1, it is left on press. Now, what I did here, and this dotted line refers to a shortcut. I created a shortcut of slot 7 over here next to slot 1. So when the player presses left and they're on slot 1, it jumps over to slot 7. And if they're on slot 8, it jumps over to 14, and vice versa. If they're on 14 and they press right, it'll jump over to slot 8. If they're on slot 4 and they press up, it will jump down to slot 32. Okay, that's how we get the movement down. But what about everything else? All right, we're going to look at slot 1, and I need you to make a mental note of what we're doing in here, because what we do in slot 1 is going to mirror every other slot with an exception of whatever variable is being called. Now, there should always be some audio feedback every time the player moves. So every object action, every node here should have some sort of audio. Keep it simple. Now, on going to slot 1, the current slot now becomes equal to 1. Okay? We also change current item equal to 1. And on slot 2, if the player changes to slot 2, we're changing current slot to 2. We're also changing current item to 2. All right? There needs to be both, and this will become apparent shortly. Okay. Repeat that same runtime convention for all slots, or just copy the entire thing. Now, how exactly does this work? We're going to kind of backpedal a little bit. I know we're not going in order here, but remember the inventory caller, right? Once the inventory caller brings up the inventory menu, the code actually starts up here. This is where it's waiting for a call, and the specified object action is the inventory caller calling the inventory menu. Now it goes down to memory. So this is how the code remembers what slot the player is on. Now it's going to go to slot 1 if the current slot is 1. And remember, in the variables, right, the default value of slot 1, or I'm sorry, current slot is always going to be 1. That is a default value. And after the game starts, it can change, and that's fine. Right? So current slot is 1, so it's going to start off at 1. And then in order for it to go to slot 2, current slot should be 2. Easy day. And we're going to repeat this same condition settings convention for all slots. And in order for it to not look absolutely stupid, I created a shortcut to memory here, memory here, memory. These are all shortcuts, and they all lead out to different lines in the nodes. And if I didn't do this, it would look a lot worse than it already does. Okay. How do we get out of the menu? Hide menu. Okay. Every single slot has a link going to hide menu. And in similar fashion to what I did with memory, I have shortcuts to hide menu everywhere, and this again just makes it look slightly more organized than it would otherwise. So slot 6 right here, if the player is on slot 6 and they press any one of these buttons, right, you want to give them many options to get out of your menu, then it's going to go to hide menu. Now, remember, If they were on slot 6, then current slot is going to remain 6, and current item is going to remain 6 as well. They're just getting out of the menu right here. So the runtime action is going to be hide menu screen. All right, fade out 1 second, disable object. All right, this is important. 1 second. I'll tell you why in a minute. Audio playback, because it's important to give the player some sort of audio feedback every time they do some sort of UI action. All right, it's an aesthetics thing. It looks nice. It sounds nice. It'll help your project out. Now the link between hide menu and return to game should be after a certain time passes 1 second. Remember what I said was going to be important. 1 second. This has to match the hide menu screen's fade out duration. If it doesn't, you may have some weird behaviors, or the player might become controllable before the menu is gone, and that can always, mess up your game or frustrate your player if they get hit right coming out of the menu or something like that. And then please don't forget to change your game speed back to 100%. If you don't do that, the game is just going to remain frozen after they come out of the inventory menu, and you're going to be wondering why. And then unconditionally go back to waiting for a call. Okay, that is 3 out of 6 objects that are involved in this UI system. The next one is the inventory cursor logic. A little bit more simpler to follow. Now, every slot, remember how I had 1 for every single box? Well, this is why it's like that. If slot 1 is on, then it's going to show the cursor. If slot 1 is off, it's not going to show the cursor. Now, this works by if the inventory signaler is on slot 1, right? So if the player is right here, then the cursor is going to show on slot 1, right? Object action, specified object action is slot 1. Inversely, all right, this is the condition going from on to off. If inventory signaler slot 1 when not doing specified actions. This is checked off. So now, anytime the player is not on slot 1, this is not going to show. This is how you get only one cursor showing up no matter what. And it's the same thing for slot 2, slot 3, so on and so forth. Make sure that the action matches up with what slot it is. Follow this condition setting convention for all slots. Okay. Or just copy what you see here. Now that we've got the cursor down, now we need to make sure that the right item shows up in the right box. Now you could just have the first item show up in the first box. That would be extremely complicated. And Zelda doesn't do it like that either. So in order for, say, this book to display on slot 1, a couple things need to happen, right? And it's the same kind of scheme as far as showing it or not showing it. In order for the book to show, slot 1 has to at least be 1 or more. If you don't own 1 or more, then it's just not going to show up in the menu, which is good. And inversely, if you have 0 or less than 0, for whatever reason you might equal to or less than 0, then it's just not going to show. So 2 conditions here. It is a check to determine whether or not it should even show this item in your inventory. Okay, and it's the same thing for everything else. I only have 14 different items here. Go ahead and use whatever images you want to display whatever items you want in your inventories. Okay, this is for the active item. Now, that little active item box in the bottom of the HUD, all right, you can delete this if you don't want it, but I think it's valuable for the player to know what item is selected. What it's going to do is default to no item. You don't have any item selected. But two things need to happen for it to display the book. Your current item needs to be 1. All right, that means slot number 1 in your inventory. All right, but if you go to slot 1 but you don't have the item, you still don't want it to show the item. So you have to make sure that slot 1 is also greater than or equal to 1. So that is the little safety check to determine, like, okay, the player's on slot 1 but hasn't found the book yet, so it's not going to show it. Okay, easy day. And then note how this is clicked right here, this little gray button. It's an equal sign that's crossed out. And essentially current item equals 1. This is saying, by having this clicked, as long as current item is not 1, then it's going to go to no item. And it's going to be able to select any other one of these items here. Now it's up to you to add in more items as you see fit. My items are here for under items, where I have the book, and it's the same thing for them all. The gem, the bag, we'll go through the book. All right, there's no runtime action for this here. However, let's say you find this on the map. All right, I have a field of view, and it's set by the player. So essentially, if the player comes within 10 pixels of this item, then they're going to pick it up. And once they come within that, it's going to increase the number of books you have, increase slot 1 by 1. So now you have a book, and it's going to destroy the object off the map, and it's going to play a little pickup sound, just like that. Repeat process for all other items that you want to have pick-upable on your map. Okay, that concludes the Advanced Inventory UI walkthrough. You can also go through the package here and use the pause menu as you see fit. You can also use the HUD that I put together as you see fit. Additionally, follow description, check out some of the other tutorials that I have referenced nearby, and that should help you out as best as I can. So to just run through this one more, now that you know how it's coded, we pick up items. All right, open the inventory, pick the item that we want, change the item that we want, and the cursor remembers what spot we're on. Now we have an inventory UI. So please, if you found this helpful, like, subscribe. I'm just trying this out right now. I don't know if I'm going to do other tutorials, but I wanted to share this with you guys. Have fun out there with PGMMV, and come over to our Discord channel, which I'll also make sure to link in the description. Take care, guys. Peace out.